Greetings, gents, and welcome to episode 4 of Econoclasm. Since we've got an election coming up here soon, I want to look at one of the major issues that at least the Democrats have been raising for this election, and that is the idea of democracy, defending democracy, combating the threat to democracy that they claim comes from Trump. So I want to look at the claim they're making about how they're fighting for democracy and how they're so pro-democracy and it's so important to vote Democrat this year because we have to protect democracy. It's interesting to know that they never really explain why. They just take it as a given that democracy is good. For some reason, people all believe that, yeah, democracy is so great. It's good that literally any person, unless you're a convicted felon, can just go out and influence the decision of who gets to run the most powerful country in the history of humanity. Any random individual can do it. That's an objective good. It's great. But I'm not here to argue about the merits of democracy. That would be for a different episode. But, just keep that in mind that we haven't heard from them about why democracy is so great. Just, accept the idea that it is because it just is. But now, they claim that they're defending democracy. But I'm not so sure about that. So, firstly, let's look at the Democrats' nominee for president in 2024. This person who is leading the fight to defend democracy, who got there in the least democratic way possible. Kamala Harris is the nominee for the Democrats this year, and when it comes to nominating someone for the parties, they have primaries. People vote. Whoever wins the primaries gets the nomination. So, stands to reason that Kamala Harris would have gotten the most votes, the majority, or the plurality, and end up winning the nomination. But she got a grand total of 0 votes in the 2024 Democratic primaries. Not one single vote in any of the state primaries was cast for her, and yet somehow she's the nominee. That is the great Democratic defender, the defender of the great ideal of democracy, is the nominee with 0 votes. That doesn't sound very democratic. She didn't get there through democracy, democratic action. She got there because she's the vice president of Biden, who dropped out of the race after he secured enough votes for the nomination. Now I'll get into Biden's dropout here in a minute. But after he was no longer running, all the delegates just simply went to Kamala. Now, I don't know how the Democratic primary works, how the rules are set up, but I guess in some way, if the current president gets the votes and drops out of the race, his vice president gets the delegates. If that's their system, that's their system. But it is definitely not democratic. That's not an act of democracy happening. There was absolutely not a single person who voted for Kamala Harris to be the nominee of the Democratic Party for president in 2024, and yet she is. That is the exact opposite of democracy. However you want to look at it, that is not democracy in action. She got there in a very undemocratic way. And it gets even worse when you look at the previous primary where she did run in. Now, if she was like the runner-up, then it would, obviously make sense. Oh, well, Biden got the nomination in 2020. She was second. She became his VP, and so when he drops out, she comes in. It would make a bit more sense. But look at the 2020 primary where she ran. It is actually hilarious how bad Kamala did in the 2020 primary. She got a grand total of 844 votes. Not 844,000, 844. That's it. For a bit of comparison, Vermin Supreme, the perennial joke candidate who wears a boot on his head, in the 2012 primary, got 833 votes. Only 11 fewer than Kamala got in 2020. And if you want to account for population growth between those 8 years by a percentage of the US population, Harris did worse than Vermin Supreme. That's how bad Kamala Harris did in 2020. That's how much Democrats didn't like her. But she's their nominee this time around, only 4 years later, after getting only 844 votes. And I just want to read off all the other candidates in the Democratic primaries, the last two primaries, 2020, then 2024. Who got more votes than Kamala? So I'm going to start in 2020. I'm not going to read their vote totals, but if you think I'm lying about them getting more, feel free to go look it up for yourself. But we're going to start with Joe Sestak, a member of the House of Representatives from 2007 to 2011. That's it. It had been 9 years since he held office, and yet he got more votes than Kamala Harris. Julian Castro, he got more. Well, it's not exactly surprising. Democrats love people with the last name Castro. So, understandable he got more. Fidel would have gotten more, I'm sure. Marianne Williamson, she got more. Cory Booker, forgot he existed. He got more. He's still a senator, though. Don't know what he's doing. John Delaney, he got more. He looks like the progenitor Tim Walz, but somehow more goofy looking, if that's possible to look more goofy than Tim Walz. But Andrew Yang, he got more votes than Kamala Harris in 2020. Although promising Democrats free money is a decent way to get a lot of votes. Michael Bennet, I've never heard of him. Deval Patrick, looks like Cory Booker just dropped out and changed his name and ran again. Tom Steyer, hedge fund manager. Manager of a hedge fund got more votes in the Democrat primary than Kamala Harris. Although if you look at where all the money is, the big billionaires and business owners, not business owners necessarily, but the corporate heads are going, it kind of made sense that a hedge fund manager would do well with the Democrats, even though they claim to be the party of the little guy. Pete Buttigieg, Mr. If you don't like gas price being so high, just buy an electric car. That genius of a man got more votes than Kamala Harris. Amy Klobuchar, not really anything to say about her, but she got more. Michael Bloomberg, he got more votes than Kamala Harris. Quick tangent. I remember a story from the 2020 primaries. I don't know if it was an actual story or it's probably just a joke, but of someone working for the Bloomberg campaign going around and everyone talking shit about Michael Bloomberg. And the campaign worker's like, this is the best job ever. I get to get paid to listen to people talk shit about Michael Bloomberg, which does sound like a pretty good job. I remember also his campaign was looking for meme makers, like as an actual job, to make memes to support Michael Bloomberg. I did apply for it, but I think his campaign suspended like 2 days later. So anyway, back to the many people who got more votes than Kamala Harris in Democratic primaries. Pocahontas, the lovely Senator Warren from Massachusetts, she got more. The woman who's about as Native American as Christopher Columbus. Actually, I just saw something recently about a new archaeological find that they're apparently thinking ancient Neolithic Europeans may have come to the Americas before the ancestors of what we know as the Native Americans, because they found more European style tools on like the east coast of Canada and the United States before the ancestors of the Native Americans would have crossed the Bering Land Bridge thousands of years ago, that they date to before that time. So it's possible that that joke that Christopher Columbus is as Native American as Elizabeth Warren might actually be legitimate if he shares DNA with those ancestors. Anyway, irrelevant. Tulsi Gabbard, the only probably non-awful candidate in these recent Democrat primaries, she got more than Kamala Harris. Bernie Sanders, who I will be talking a bit more about later, but he got more. And of course, Joe Biden, who got the nomination in 2020. And moving on to the 2024 primary, people who got more votes than Kamala Harris. You got these two dudes, Dean Phillips and Jason Palmer. They both got more votes. Marianne Williamson again. And then, of course, Joe Biden. So, all those people got more votes to be the Democratic nominee for president than Kamala Harris did. And almost anyone who's ever ran for president got more votes than she did in 2024. And yet she's the nominee. That doesn't sound like democracy. She didn't get there through democracy. No one decided she was going to be the nominee but the party, whatever rules they have. So their big claim about, well, we're defending democracy. You're not. You're not engaging in it. So you have to what? Work anti-democratically to defend democracy? That's counterintuitive. That defeats the whole purpose of your ideals. So how exactly did Kamala Harris become the nominee for president for the Democrats? Well, in the very democratic manner of a coup against the actual nominee, Joe Biden. Now, I am by no means a fan of Biden, the dementia-riddled pants shitter who's been the puppet for whoever is running the country for the past 3.5 years. But you can't deny that the way he stopped being the nominee is a little weird. and certainly doesn't seem to line up with the Democrats' ideals of democracy. You had that terrible debate performance against Trump, where the dementia that had been constantly called out by every sane person in the country for years showed itself. People knew for so long that he was not mentally fit to be, God, a cashier, let alone president of the United States. But, the media, the state run media we have, oh, well, that's out of context, or that just simply didn't happen. The Ministry of Truth out there telling us what the actual story was. Reject the evidence of your eyes and ears. It is the party's most fundamental command. Good old 1984. But we all knew he wasn't fit. They said he wasn't fit to serve trial, and they let him stay president. Now, the only reason I don't want to harp on that too much is because if he was unfit to be president, if they decided that after he was elected, then that means Kamala becomes president. And that is one of the last things I want. Holy. Not here to discuss the candidacy or how much I like who, but yes, so Biden's mental decline, that everyone who gave a shit about these things like honesty and truth was well aware was happening, showed itself in the debate against Donald Trump. And then all the Democrats were like, well, we can't keep pretending this isn't happening now. Everyone saw it. And so everyone started going and suggesting that Biden drop out. All kinds of people in the media, in the Democratic Party, to think even Obama. But you had all these people coming out saying Biden should drop out. People telling Biden he should drop out. But time and time again, he came out and said, I'm not dropping out. I'm the president. I'm the nominee. I'm staying in this race. And this went on for a good bit. And the last time he had said this was either the day before or the day of him dropping out. Quote unquote, dropping out. And then we get an announcement on letterhead of Joe Biden, not the president, Joe Biden, just Joe Biden, saying that he's withdrawing from the race. No address to the nation, no video, not even an official letterhead of the president, just, I'm Joe Biden, I'm dropping out. Here on just a printed page, that's it. And then we don't hear from him for several days after. I thought he was dead, for sure. I mean, we've only seen him a handful of times since then, but he's not dead. Thankfully, because it means Kamala would be president right now, but it was a very suspicious way of how he dropped out. I don't want to get into conspiracy theories here, but it wouldn't surprise me if it was done by someone, and then they just told him. Someone could have written a letter and just said, oh, hey, Joe, you dropped out. Well, I did? Yeah. See, here's a letter proof. I don't remember. Oh, you did. Here's the proof. Here's the letter saying you did. Oh. And, his mind's so gone, it wouldn't be hard to convince him. I remember seeing a meme back during the initial 2020 election saying, if you give me a Blu-ray player in one night, I can convince Joe Biden the events of Transformers actually happened. Which realistically, you probably could. Regardless, it's clear that Biden didn't want to drop out, but you had the entire party, all these political donors who started moving their money away from Biden. They all decided they wanted him to drop out, and then he drops out. The person who won the nomination to be the candidate for the Democrats in 2024 was forced out by the elites within the party and their mega donors. That's not democracy. You can't sit here and tell me that you're defending democracy if you just completely force out the democratically elected candidate, the democratically nominated candidate. You're acting directly against democracy. You're not defending democracy, you're actively fighting it. And there's a lot more to this. You can see it with RFK Jr. before he suspended his campaign and backed Trump. The Democrats were suing to keep him off the ballot in various states because they didn't want people who wanted to vote for Biden at the time to vote for RFK instead because they liked him. No, instead of letting people have as many options available to them to engage in democracy, no, they tried to go through the courts to shut down a candidate so that people couldn't engage in democracy and vote for who they wanted. It's not democracy. They were trying to use the power of government to fight democracy. It's ridiculous. And in the primaries, they were working hard against RFK Jr. There was some suspicious work with like censoring him and trying to deplatform him and hide him from potential supporters and donors when he was still trying to primary Biden. They wanted them to get near it because he might actually have a chance of beating Biden because people liked him. He had name recognition and he had genuine ideas. He wasn't just a cardboard cutout that the Democrats could just post whatever they wanted on, like Kamala's been. So they worked hard against him when he was still running because they wanted to directly prevent democracy from working and people should vote for their preferred candidate. It's ridiculous that they're claiming to defend democracy when throughout the election they're actively fighting against it. And it's not like this is a new thing. Look at what happened in the 2016 and 2020 primaries with Bernie Sanders. They basically rigged it against him. The DNC was clearly working for Hillary and Biden. And, Hillary was given debate questions ahead of time. DNC funds were basically under the control of the Clinton campaign. The DNC worked completely for Hillary, Biden. The superdelegates were completely for them. They certainly weren't waiting to see what the primaries decided. To see, we should allocate it based on the primaries. No, they were just all backing their preferred candidate because why do they care about democracy? They'll say they do, but they clearly don't. So this is not anything new for the Democrats. They've been doing it for several cycles now. They worked obviously against Bernie, who looked like he had a real shot to win at least the nomination in either 2016 or 2020. Although it is funny to note that Bernie still cucked out at the end both times and endorsed Hillary and Biden, which isn't a surprise. As a Democratic socialist, kind of prone to being a cuck. It seems like a very cuck ideology. Just look at that one clip of the Democrat Socialists for America meeting where, the one dude is whining that people are clapping because it affects his audio sensitivity, and That dude who's like 80 years old is screaming about not using gendered words because that matters. But so they worked, obviously, to keep a potential democratically preferred candidate, Bernie, from getting the nomination because, oh, well, we don't care what the people say. We want our person in. Now let's look at the person who they claim is such a massive threat to this sacred cow of democracy, Donald Trump, who became president in the 2016 election. And do you think the Democrats just accepted the result of the Democratic election? No, no, of course not. Firstly, they denied that the results were legitimate. They said he was an illegitimate president. They said that he lost the election and that Russia interfered to put him in. You know, the reason why they consider Trump such a threat to democracy is because he didn't accept the results in 2020. Now, I haven't looked at the evidence. I need to see, Dinesh D'Souza's film about however many mules it was. I forget the number, 2,000 or something. I don't know for a fact, obviously. I haven't seen the evidence to say that 2020 was, stolen or rigged. I do remember I've heard a lot of stories about things that were suspicious about it. One of my best friends went to vote, and when he gave his name, they said he had already voted. Sort of anecdotal evidence, but that's at least something for me to know that, yeah, it sure wasn't 100% legitimate and soundproof, and there was no problems. But they say Trump is a threat because he denied the 2020 results, even though there's some weight to the idea that, maybe it wasn't all on the up and up. But I'm not here to discuss that. Then you have January 6th, where the most tragic day in American history, and more people died than 9/11 and Pearl Harbor combined. No, that's not a claim they make. Hyperbolic joke, since a lot of partisan people don't have the intelligence necessary to grasp humor or sarcasm. But the horrible, horrible events of January 6th, where the people of the United States walked around in a government building that their tax dollars pay for. Tragic. This assault on democracy where they walked around in a building. Yeah. Terrifying. And there's a lot that can be said about January 6th. Not going to say it here. I'll probably do an episode about it on the next anniversary of January 6th. If, our country can survive that long, if Donald Trump wins the election, who knows what he'll do between now and then. He might destroy the world as we know it. But Trump's such a threat to democracy because he denied the results of the 2020 elections. Democrats denied the results of the 2016 elections. Like I said, they called him an illegitimate president. They said Russia interfered. They said he wasn't the true president. He lost the election. So if it's such a threat to democracy to deny election results, why are the Democrats themselves not calling out the people who denied the 2016 election results? Very clearly should be considered a threat to democracy. No, but most of those people are out here now saying the Democrats are fighting for democracy now. Okay. So, what were you a threat to democracy in 2016? But now or in the during Trump's presidency, rather, because it wasn't just right after the election; they did all throughout his presidency. But were you a threat to democracy then, and now suddenly, oh no, I'm on the side of democracy now? I was a threat to democracy, but now I'm all pro democracy. Sure, I don't think any of them will say that. No, they'll say that. Well, of course, Trump wasn't a legitimate president, but Biden clearly was, and then when Trump said he wasn't, now that's a problem. Okay. And then throughout his presidency, the Democrats did so much to try to interfere with the democratically chosen president. Okay, he didn't win the popular vote, but he got the electoral college. Fine. Have that argument. But by the system we've set up, that's how he was elected. And important to note, that's the system we have. We are not a pure democracy. We are a constitutional republic that set up the electoral college specifically to avoid the problems of a pure democracy. So that way the small states would agree to join the Union. The Constitution shouldn't exist in the first place. It was an authoritarian paragraph, but again, another thing, not here to discuss that, but he was elected president. And then the Democrats did everything they could for 4 years to get in his way and also bullshit impeachments to try and remove him because, well, we don't care about democracy and what the people voted for. No, we'll try and remove that. We want to remove the democratically elected president of the people because they love democracy so much, because they're such staunch defenders of democracy. And, interesting to note, Obama obviously has been a part of this and the importance of democracy. I didn't hear any Democrats saying he was a threat to democracy when his government led a coup against Yanukovych in Ukraine in 2014, or against the countless interference in democracy around the world throughout the history of the United States, especially in the last several decades. No. Well, that democracy doesn't matter. Only the democracy that is against Trump and gets Democrats elected, that's when democracy matters, and that's the only time it matters. And let's not forget, the Democrats love democracy so much that they're trying to kill the former democratically elected president, the democratically appointed nominee for the Republican Party. They love democracy so much, they're not willing to let democracy take place. They're trying to kill him. Now, yes, it's not every single Democrat. You've had 2 attempts, one that really should have got him if he didn't turn his head. You got another guy who just went into, try to get into one of his campaign events with guns. Who knows how many other possible people are out there plotting right now. And since we know the first 2 attempted assassins were on the FBI's radar, really, someone should just go ask the FBI, hey, how many more people are trying to kill Trump? You guys obviously know. You have files on them all for sure. Doesn't mention how many they're actively grooming to try to do it, or to notice someone's going to do it and then they, set them up so that way they can say they stopped an assassination attempt, because the only thing the FBI can do to justify its existence is fake terror plots and entrap and honeypot people into doing it, whatever. But there are Democrats trying to kill Trump. That's not very democratic. That's not letting democracy happen. You're doing everything you can to fight democracy. obviously, if Trump dies, Vance isn't going to have the massive support that Trump did. He might, because everyone will go for the guy Trump picked to be his second, the person who kind of seems to be Trump's handpicked successor after if he wins again, he can only do 4 years more. And he's so old that even if he loses, he might not be around for the next election, even barring, more assassination attempts from the left. But, they're trying to take out the person who has a chance to be the people's democratic choice for president because, democracy is so important. And then just another point. They care so much about democracy that they're going to actively fight to prevent the elections from having any integrity. They're going to do everything they can to make it so there's no accountability, there's no checks in place to make sure the election happens where each person just gets their one vote and only their one vote. They're fighting to prevent any sort of system that can protect the integrity of elections. They hate the idea of, you know, voter IDs. They're actively suing states that are trying to get non-citizens off the ballot or try to get any sort of integrity in the elections. You can't say you're defending democracy if you're not supporting the integrity of democracy. What democracy only matters with the system that allows you to get elected or that allows, you know, fraud to happen. However minuscule or major it may be, you should want as little fraud as possible and setting up to do whatever you can. What, because you think blacks can't get IDs, that we shouldn't have voter IDs? Let's accept that is true. That blacks have an unfair disadvantage of getting IDs. Okay. I haven't looked at this number in a while, but the last time I saw it, it was around $4 trillion that the US government collects in taxes. And IDs are so vital to so many things in this country, like exercising other rights, any right really. You want to get on a plane, you need ID. If you want to own a gun, in a lot of states you need an ID. If you want to go into a government building, anytime it's up January 6th apparently, but you need an ID. If IDs were so important, why not use some of that $4 trillion you steal from us every year to make sure everyone gets an ID? Right now it costs money to get an ID. I mean, that's why I don't have a state ID right now, because I'm not giving them money to renew my state ID, because fuck you. I'm not giving you more money. But if you're going to have a government and a democracy in elections, and you're going to steal $4 trillion from us, use a little bit of that money and make sure every individual citizen has a government ID, free of charge. We pay the taxes. I'm not obviously in favor of free stuff, but if you're going to give anything out for free, have it be the government IDs that are so important to so many aspects that we require to exercise rights that the government, holds against us unless we have proper identification. But Not when it comes to voting, but just give everyone an ID. So that way then you have nothing to say. What? I don't, would that be a fair compromise to Democrats? We'll give out free IDs, then we can require IDs. So that way we don't have to worry about, blacks not being able to get IDs. Plus, this is a famous image of Nelson Mandela, perhaps the least racist against blacks man who's ever lived. Wearing a shirt that says, get an ID, get registered, vote. If, in South Africa, they require IDs post, what's it called? Segregation was in the U.S. Apartheid. Post apartheid. If they're going to have, them get IDs, it's not racist for the United States to have IDs. We're not operating under apartheid. You can cry you want about systematic racism and whatever bullshit claims you want to make with regards to that, but if Nelson Mandela says get an ID to vote, what rights do any of these Democrats have to say, oh, no, that's racist to want IDs? Just use some of that stolen money. Take some from Israel or Ukraine that you're giving so much to, or these illegal immigrants who are getting thousands of dollars, free housing, free food. Take some money from them and give everyone an ID so we don't have to worry about who has an ID and who doesn't. Have people go around and to people's houses. That way people don't have to travel anywhere. They don't have to take time off work, school, whatever, watching their kids. And do it that way. If you care so much about democracy, you need to support the integrity of democracy. But as I've shown here, Democrats clearly don't care about democracy. They say they do, but everything they do is against democracy. I'm just so sick of hearing them say, this is about democracy. We need to defend democracy. You don't give a shit about democracy. Stop pretending. I would have a lot more respect for you if you stopped pretending. Just stop the lying. You don't care about democracy. Everything you do is against democracy. So the next time you hear some Democrats say, it's so important to vote for Kamala because we need to defend democracy. Or if you're trying to say we need to vote Kamala to defend democracy, just realize it's bullshit. You don't care about democracy. Stop saying you do. Stop pretending you do. Stop acting so high and mighty for democracy. You don't care about it. Well, that's going to wrap it up for this episode. This was a fun one. We're almost through election season. Even though election season is probably not going to end on election night, because I know in Pennsylvania they've already said they won't have the results on election night. Interesting. Remember what happened the last time we had to go overnight before we got results? That was interesting. But almost through election season, and then we'll probably have the real fun begin after that. But, I'm not going to say go out and vote because I don't really care. We had Trump for 4 years, we had Biden for 4 years. Nothing really changed between the two, really. I'm not getting into that. But, most people who make an episode like this would say, go out and vote. I don't care. My polling place is literally less than a 2-minute walk from where I live. And, that's probably too long for me to give a shit to get up and go vote. But, have fun. with the rest of election season and all the fun that will come after. Thanks for listening.